Now, what will happen to Officer Darren Wilson and the question of what should happen to him has brought out strong opinions both in the United States and elsewhere.
Yeah, here with his own thoughts on what he believes will happen with the grand jury, Dean Obeidallah, who is a Daily Beast columnist, former trial lawyer as well. And, you know, your article's interesting because you're sort of suggesting that the way the law is structured in Missouri, not just there, but in this case it is, really comes down in favour of the police officer.
It does. And for people who don't follow American law closely, it's rare that a police officer is indicted for killing even an unarmed person, let alone convicted of a crime. So under Missouri law, there's actually a statute that empowers police officers to use deadly force under certain circumstances. And my view is that, and I'm not advocating this, I'm saying this as objectively as I possibly can, that it's very unlikely that that grand jury will indict the officer given the facts that are going presented before that grand jury.
And Brown was seen in the surveillance video stealing the cigars.
Yes.
And initially we were told that the officer didn't know that when the shooting happened, and we've since found out that Wilson did know that through a radio dispatch message. Will that help his case?
Yes, it does, because under the statute, there's actually 3 provisions that have to be fulfilled to immunize the police officer from being found criminally liable for killing someone. And one is, is the person who, the suspect, had they committed a felony? And so you have to have knowledge of that. That's the second part. So in the case, we've seen the radio dispatches saying that he was informed that there was a robbery. The robbery, this is a felony. When you use force and theft together, that's felony. And that he heard that before he saw the 2 individuals walking the street, one being Michael Brown. So those are the 2 key factors. The third key factor is, did the police officer act reasonably in the circumstance? And that's what goes down to the credibility of the police officer. And in this case, it was very rare. The officer testified before the grand jury for over 4 hours. And prosecutors I spoke to said never, not once, has a police officer been indicted who testified before the grand jury, because the big factor is reasonability. So they're going to hear from this police officer who's going to say, I feared for my life. The reason I had to discharge my weapon and kill this person, and I didn't want to kill him, but I had to save my own life. So that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you break it down like that. And we were talking to Don Lemon earlier in Ferguson about, you know, whether this chain of evidence, if you like, is what is going to be released by the grand jury. You know, what are the other things that comes out of this? There's so many other aspects to this, and a lot of it very emotional as well. But we in the United States, and for our international viewers, of course, saw a very unusual thing, and that is really a paramilitary police force on the streets. It exposed a lot of things, didn't it?
It did. And, you know, if you remember back to the time of when it was really out, the streets were filled with people protesting. You had Humvees on the streets. It was the same time the conflict in Gaza was going on. And numerous people, including myself, wrote articles showing the comparison that they did in the streets of an American city, a small city, albeit. There was Humvees, almost tanks, military officials, people with sniper rifles sitting on top of military hardware, pointing them at civilians. It was a very scary time. And you know, for people who don't know this, in America, if you're black, you have a 3 times increased chance of being killed by a police officer than if you're white. And that's statistically proven. So this shows there is an inherent discrepancy in the way blacks and whites are treated by our law enforcement.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the reaction to this and how much evidence will be released to try to calm it down and which way it goes. Dean, great to have you on the program. Dean Obeidallah there, Daily Beast. Thanks so much.
Now, in Hong Kong, it's a waiting game between protesters and police. And no one seems to know when officers might make their move to throw the protesters out.
We will explain what they're waiting for in a live report from Hong Kong. Do stay with us.